are federally with the piece of legislation that's so important to this discussion. And I think one of the questions that a lot of people ask is, when we think about the United States Congress, not you per se, but we think about stalemates. We think about it being clogged up. What does it look like to have this piece of legislation pass, and what do we need to do?
For me, this issue of second chances and clean slate is both professional and personal. And I think that's true for so many of us. When I came into Congress, it was one of the areas that I wasn't even on the committee that does this work, but I knew how important it was. I mean, everything from our economy, it's like $87 billion of wasted economic impact in our country. Our children, like half of our children have a parent who has been involved or incarcerated or involved or arrested. It's everything. It is mass incarceration. It is all of these issues. And so for me, I was glad to be a champion of the Clean Slate legislation. You asked about the gridlock. I actually call this bill my strange bedfellows bill because it is literally people who don't hardly agree on a lot of other stuff, but we all have come together to say, number one, this doesn't make sense, that we are incarcerating this many people and then not giving folks a second chance when they are released. So that's everything from 9 out of 10 employers require background checks. This bill would actually seal the records, automatically seal of someone for a simple, nonviolent drug offense, and also an offense involving marijuana. And so again, it's like 9 out of 10 employers, 4 out of 5 landlords, and 3 out of 5 colleges and universities. So you can't get a job, you can't get housing, you can't get an education. How do we expect you to be able to live your life?
Well, how do you push back on people who say that this is not necessary, or why are we giving these people a second chance? What's the messaging behind the pushback that we have to give?
I mean, there's so many reasons why, right? You pay me now or you pay me later. The amount of money that we are spending on incarcerating folks is taking away from the productivity of this country. That's one reason. Another reason, our bill is an automatic sealing with the exception of some federal offenses that are nonviolent that never had a chance to petition the court. Now you will be able to, but if it's automatic, that cuts down, that's efficiency for the courts. It's also, again, just a basic, makes sense kind of law. And I think that's why we're finding so many people and employers in Delaware. I was Secretary of Labor. And so employers come up to me and say, I can't find people. If a background check is stopping them from hiring somebody, it's stopping them from being strong in their business, but it's also stopping our communities from being safe and strong.
We're going to hear, because this is a bipartisan piece of legislation, one of the unique parts about the NBA, and when you join their mission, you see people of all walks of life and strange bedfellows. And so we'll have a word from United States Congressman Kelly Armstrong.
Greetings, everybody, and welcome to the NBA Social Justice Coalition's Second Chance Town Hall. Why are we here? What are we talking about? Well, smart criminal justice reform is a bipartisan idea. It doesn't matter if you're in a rural state or an urban state. It doesn't matter if you're in a red district or a blue district. We know that we need to be smarter on crime, not just tougher on crime. And that begins at the beginning, whether it's supporting more funding for public defenders, which is something I've been proud to support this Congress, or the Equal Act, which has a parity in sentencing between crack cocaine and powdered cocaine. Through a lot of hard work with people who are probably with you today, we got the First Step Act passed, and that reduced the parity from 18 to 1. But now it's time to get it to 1 to 1. That also goes with the Clean Slate and a Fresh Start Act. We need to get these programs in place. When people come out of prison, there are so many barriers to entry to get back into society that it can oftentimes get so frustrating that people slip back into the habits and patterns that ended up putting them in prison to begin with. For just about every single crime that somebody is incarcerated for, eventually they are going to be released. And it's our duty to provide rehabilitation and provide the services we need to make sure that when they get out, they have the tools necessary in order to become productive members of society. But the one nice thing about reentry and second chances, and it doesn't matter if it's the NBA, Goldman Sachs, the local county business construction company in Fargo, North Dakota, If you give people an opportunity and put the resources in place, you do a lot of good for a lot of different people. And the ROI on this is amazing, because if you can keep people out of the prison system and keep recycling them in and out through addiction, frustration, all of the different things, poverty, all of those different issues, not only do you break that cycle for that person and his or her family, but the chances of their kids being part of the system goes down exponentially. And that's what good policy should be about. And that's what our criminal justice system is designed for. That's why I'm so excited to work with people on both sides of the aisle. And that's why I really, really wish I could be there today. But I appreciate everything you're all doing. And any way we can help in my office, please reach out. Thank you to the NBA again. Thanks for being willing to step up. Thanks for being leaders in your community on an issue that is so important. And I just appreciate everything that everybody's done.
So, Holly, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is, so talk about the bipartisan nature of this Second Chance Act.
So I'm from Elizabethtown. We call it E-Town, Kentucky. About as ruby red as you can be. I used to think criminal justice reform, that Republicans came to this issue, with a perspective of like fiscal responsibility and, fixing broken bureaucracy, and that Democrats came to the issue, because of racial justice. But I've now determined it's not that at all. I think it's just basic humanity. Every single American family has now been touched by our broken justice system. And we don't want to throw in the towel on our friends and family members who have addiction issues and mental health issues, who are just plain made a terrible mistake and want to turn their lives around. No state, Commonwealth, has been more impacted by the drug scourge than Kentucky. And so we care very, very deeply about these issues in Kentucky. And I do want to say thank you to James, thank you to Mr. Tatum, Mr. Silver, for being so bipartisan and so positive with your approach to criminal justice reform. And, this work is like basketball, it transcends politics, and I'm really just grateful to be a part of the movement.
There are a lot of issues to tackle, but what made you and Mark and Adam and many others decide that this was going to be an issue that you put at the forefront?
We have 4 major issues that we focus on for the coalition, starting with voting rights, policing reform, criminal justice, and community safety. But across those, there are a host of things that we could and do spend our time on. When it comes to what's most important and why second chances rises to the fore for us, it's what Holly just said. It's fundamental fairness. And for us, being an organization thinking about how we bring people together from different viewpoints around the justice issues that unite us, we want to start with the things that people can understand easily. And this is one of those things where you talk to a layperson on the street who hasn't heard of Second Chance, who may not be paying attention to politics or policy, and you say, well, look at the number of people who are impacted by the justice system, 1 in 3, right, across the country. What does that mean? That means that our friends, our neighbors, our family members, they all may have a challenge that we want to help resolve, and that it's good not just for them, but for all of us. So we start with those issues that we can bring to a broad audience and try and bring more people in to understand there's a role that they can play in making a difference.
How will this piece of legislation affect change in some of the disparities we see in our criminal justice system? And I have a question about E-Town for you.
Yeah. I mean, as we were talking, I was just thinking about how particularly communities of color, Black and brown folks, are disproportionately impacted by the criminal justice system. And that's another reason why for us it is humanity, but it's also equity and fairness. And that's another reason why this is important. I really want to piggyback on what James just said about, for anybody, why is this important? A lot of people will say, I'll talk to students and that's, or even athletes and others, and they'll say, oh, I don't do politics. Well, I'm like, politics is doing you. You want clean water or air? That's what getting involved and engaged is all about. That's why I really appreciate the Players Association taking this bull by the horns, because it really is, number one, getting educated about what's happening. Number two, engaging in it in your local area. Don't wait. Get involved. Make sure your legislators, you're on the federal level, state level, and you are getting involved.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you, Holly, was about E-Town. We've seen a new wave or new epidemic of drugs ravaging our communities. Talk about what this piece of legislation would do in E-Town in giving people a second chance who deserve one.
Well, everybody in my hometown knows someone, is related to someone, or is someone who's had an addiction issue. And, obviously that impacts your ability to improve your education, to get a good job, to secure adequate housing, to even go on a field trip with your kid. And so, it's very personal to us, and we will support anyone, Democrat, Republican, Independent, I don't care, who is willing to offer second chances to our loved ones. I've polled this issue all over the country, probably 25 states across this country. And without fail, these issues poll between 70 and 90% across the ideological spectrum. So don't let anybody tell you that these are political losers or that there's some sort of negative politics attached. That's just simply not true. The evidence shows that all of these policies reduce crime and recidivism rate. Call your elected officials. Nothing moves a member of Congress, and you'll back me up on this, like a phone call from someone from their backyard. Tell them that you support the Clean Slate Act. Tell them that you support the Equal Act. I hear this all the time, that people say, oh, my vote doesn't matter. No one cares what I think. They absolutely do. They make note of it. You might even get a call back from that lawmaker. And then I would say, if you're a business owner, my goodness, the talent that you're missing out on if you're not willing to offer second chances to people who've made mistakes. It's not good for business. It's not good for your community, and it's not good for public safety.
They said everything I was going to say. I just would again encourage that understanding of what's out there. The fact that we have this clean slate bill, we have not been able to get it into law yet. While we have this support, we need a groundswell of support. We need you as how we say, call your legislators. Some way, find your way in. Whether it's your faith, your place of worship, find your way into this and have your voice heard. And let's make this a reality. Let's clean some slates. Let's let people have second chances, because we deserve it. We all deserve it.